Mr. Grant, please begin with an overview of your agenda items for this evening.
Tonight we have two agendas. First one's informational. This is our quarterly update of the capital improvement plan. And this evening on the second agenda, the board has asked our solicitor, Kyle Berman, to review the proposed resolution for the Local Economic Revitalization Tax Assistance Act, or our LERTA. And that will require board consensus to move forward to a vote by the board at the next meeting. This evening, Mr. Leaf and Mr. McGilvery will present the quarterly update on our capital improvement plan.
Good evening, board members, fellow administrators, and members of our community. Tonight, we will be bringing our quarterly update of the district's capital buildings project list for your consideration. Additionally, we'll review the current projects we have in progress and list those for which we will soon be requesting approval to go out for bid. Apologies for the scratchy throat. I'm joined tonight by Mr. Tim Leaf, our Assistant Manager of Facilities. Slide 1. With regard to the capital improvements list, the current list has been made available on board docs. You will note that this report looks slightly different from prior ones, as we've attempted to standardize the report so that the same potential projects are listed for each school. We've also divided the projects into specific sections: building exterior, building interiors, roofs, and wherever possible, added the quantities and years of installation. While it is true that not every school shares the same components, like elevators or gym dividers, roofs, we have taken the original report from our former architect of record and modified it to be more universal in its assessment. The list still prioritizes capital improvement needs at each building using the priority scale seen on this slide. Let's begin by discussing the new items we'll be bringing to you in the next month or so to seek your approval to go out for bid. It is our intention to have the following projects completed before the end of the 18-19 school year. Okay. The first item is replacing the PA systems at Primus, Westbrook, and Hillcrest. Hillcrest is new to our list, but recent breakdowns and repair estimates have raised its priority. A recent inspection by the Township Fire Department revealed that our high school stair tower fire doors are in need of replacement. Given the amount of traffic they receive and their age, this repair is paramount to the safety of our students and staff, thus moving it up in priority. Regarding playgrounds, we'll be looking to improve playground surfaces at Highland and Hillcrest, installing a new piece of equipment, playground equipment at Hillcrest, potentially installing new equipment at Highland Park, and installing a new slide at Bywood. These playground enhancements have all moved up in priority. Fire alarm systems at Highland and Primus, while both certified by the fire department, are old and need to be replaced. These have been moved up the list in priority. We'll solicit quotations for the stair tower plaster work required at Stonehurst, which has been a priority one for some time. As an aside, in addition to addressing the priority one items between now and the end of the current school year, we'll also begin to draw up our annual summer tiling, blacktop, and concrete work to be completed over the summer. If you have any questions regarding the movement of these items moving of these items to priority one or the list in general, Mr. Leaf and I are happy to answer them for you at any time. Moving on to current or recently completed projects. The contractor, the architect, and the district have completed a final punch list walkthrough of the roof replacement project at Hillcrest Elementary, and we are very pleased with the result. Warranties will be sent to us shortly with a full 20-year lifespan. The Highland Park project is underway and will continue through the fall of 2019. Formally entitled the Mechanical Room Replacement Project, this work involves removing the old cooling tower and chiller, which provides air conditioning for the building. That is underway now, and so far we are happy with the workflow. We meet as a group every 2 weeks with the architect of record and Mr. Leaf, intermittently meets with the individual contractors as needed. There are 4 separate contractors on this project. The new chiller is scheduled to be in place in the spring, and that's when the boiler work will begin, finishing in late summer, early fall. At Beverly Hills, The chiller replacement project is also underway there, and similarly, we meet every 2 weeks with all parties concerned, 2 vendors in this case, and Mr. Leaf inspects, mediates things as we go along. The project is anticipated to end in early April. Moving on to newer business. We have met with architects on several new initiatives to gather information and proposals to bring to the board's attention, with the expectation being that we can seek bids for these projects. The first new project is in conjunction with KCBA Architects to provide us with a costing out of a new middle school in Clifton Heights. We are reviewing initial proposals, refining our requirements, and hope to bring the request to the board at the January committee meeting. Similarly, we are engaging Murata Maine Architects to provide us with a proposal that we would again bring to your attention at the January committee meeting for bathroom renovations at the Upper Darby High School, primarily in the C building, but also including a portion of the B building and the gym lobby as well. We would hope to have this work completed prior to the beginning of the 1920 school year. As mentioned earlier, we've requested from GKO Architects a cost proposal for replacing the PA systems in Primus, Westbrook, and Hillcrest. These systems are all Priority 1 status items and are a safety concern. We've also asked GKO to review the playground issue at Highland and Hillcrest and issue us their proposed remedies. As it pertains to the PA system, we look to complete this work prior to the end of the 18-19 school year. So in summary, we've made significant strides in prioritizing our capital needs. We look forward to a new year with more accomplishments and bringing our facilities to their fullest capabilities. Do we have any questions or concerns?
Yeah, just one point of clarification for the PA system replacements. What building is that across the district, or what school?
Hillcrest, Primos, and Westbrook.
Can we list those on there? And like for bathroom renovations, can we put high school on there?
Yeah, sure. Anything else? Thank you all very much. Thank you. Happy holidays to all of you.
So the solicitor is going to present our proposal for the LERTA resolution. I was a chair of this committee, and I'd like to thank my committee members, Ed Brown, Gina Curry, and Don Fields, who replaced Heather Boyd. We worked really hard, and it was a long process, and there was a lot of going back to the drawing board, but we think what we're presenting this evening is the best proposal that we came up with. The idea of LERTA is a great one. It provides tax assistance for worthwhile projects in the district that otherwise wouldn't happen, allowing already underdeveloped and very little tax revenue producing properties to better utilized by the community, thus providing needed additional revenue while at the same time hopefully resulting in a decrease of unsightly and underused commercial properties. The committee's goal was to get this right by working to get the proper balance between encouraging revitalization in the district along with the township and not giving up too much of the revenue necessary for the short-term needs. We think we accomplished this goal. We have proposed a plan that closely, in a resolution actually, that closely mirrors the township's policy, and we look forward to continuing to work with the township, and I see our mayor here this evening, to bring worthwhile revitalization projects into our community. So before the presentation, some things I'd like the board to think about. If the school district doesn't approve a LERTA, we'll continue to collect tax revenue on underdeveloped, underutilized land. Many of these properties are eyesores and will only get worse over time, possibly even going into tax delinquency. It may be difficult to attract other businesses to the district. If a LERTA resolution is approved, this allows tax assistance to qualified builders and developers to upgrade the properties. While foregoing some tax revenue on improvements over the first few years, over the long term, more revenue will be collected and the community will be improved. The community will be reviewed by developers as a desirable place to do business and hopefully lead to more revitalization. The proposed schedule, as you will see, closely mirrors that of the township. The 5-year schedule is similar to other school districts and taxing authorities. The only real difference between the school district and the township is in year 1. The township gives 100% benefit, while the school district is proposing a 90% assistance. The rationale for this is that the township will still be able to collect various business and mercantile taxes and service fees on the businesses that the school district does not. We didn't feel that we could give up everything. After 1 year, the school district does match this township schedule. So in conclusion, the LERTA concept is nothing new in the development world. The challenge is to balance a fair benefit to attract the right kind of development without giving up the school district its rightfully due to receive from a tax standpoint.
All right. For those that don't know me, my name's Kyle Berman. I and my firm represent the school district and the board in particular. As you've just heard from Ms. Jordan, the board has actually been kicking around the idea of a LERTA resolution for some time now. And I guess the big picture to take away from this, first of all, is that in the short term, it would call for you giving up some added income potentially, and actually even potentially losing some income from particular properties, with the idea that after a few years, hopefully there'd be such significant development that you'd be getting much higher tax revenue in exchange. I'm going to be presenting some background and some highlights from the resolution. But keep in mind that at the end of the day, I'm not making a recommendation one way or the other. That's a political one for the board to make. So to start with, Act 76 of 77 was where the LERTA comes from. It's the Local Economic Revitalization Tax Assistance Act. It's been amended since that time, but it's essentially had the same structure since it was first enacted. And the idea is to encourage business growth, and by encouraging business growth, sort of have that trickle-down effect of it benefiting everybody below that. So then what does the LERTA do? It permits property owners to make improvements on the property and have the increase in the assessed value phased in over a couple of years. It can reduce the overall assessment on the property depending on how extensive the renovations are, including a worst-case scenario where a building is simply knocked to the ground and rebuilt, in which case the LERTA would apply to all of the improvements, and the land value would be all that you'd be getting in the short term. The land value would be all you'd be getting at the full rate. The improvements would be everything beyond that. So the exemption would apply in the year following the completion of the project, and the one thing I'm going to mention periodically throughout here is that upkeep and maintenance don't count. So no matter how much upkeep and maintenance you do on a property, it's not going to count as an improvement under LERTA. So the next slide, the next slide after that, it might be hard to read, so let me just tell you what it says. This is an actual property that I called up to the Board of Assessment to get some information about. It does not qualify for a LERTA because the work done on it was obviously before any sort of action taken by the board. However, what the numbers in red reflect there is the first number is 79,291, and that's the amount of tax revenue that you would expect to get from that property if nothing at all were done to it and it stayed at the same value without any improvements. The next value, the next value there is the 151,702. Actually, that's not the next value. The next value is the The 248,000, that's if somebody, absent the LERTA resolution, were to make the improvements on the property, what sort of tax revenue would you be seeing over the course of those 5 years? And then the last number is the 151,702, and that represents if the work were done, what the income would be to the district from that, or the income. The difference there is $72,000 that you'd be not seeing. Now, I will point out that I added a bottom row, which is that you see that once there's no LERTA reduction that's going on, you'll see that same dollar figure going forward for whether there was a LERTA in place or not. You're still back at the same point, is my point. This, by the way, assumes that the land value was the value of that property and that it simply was not being developed without having some sort of action taken. And the land value there is $410,250. With the new construction, this particular property went up in value by almost 3 times. So you can figure what that would do as far as other properties in the area would be. Something to keep in mind, as I've mentioned before, and I'm going to keep saying it, this only applies to industrial and commercial properties. And again, maintenance and upkeep don't qualify. So you can't get any sort of LERTA for residential property. And once you've approved the LERTA, it's going to apply under your normal criteria on every property. You can't make a determination based upon the merit of a particular case, whether you want that property to have a LERTA exemption or not. If it qualifies, it's going to get it. The only thing that you can do is take a real close look to make sure it's actually doing the things that it's supposed to be doing. It's actually making the improvements. Another thing to keep in mind is that you don't have any control over the extent of the dollar figure that's granted for an exemption there. So if somebody is going to make enormous improvements, it's not like you can say, well, for this property, because there's a larger increase in the value, we're going to give you a smaller reduction in the taxes due. The other thing that was available under the statute, which you don't have any control to impose, is a cap on the amount that can be granted. That actually was something the township would have had to have done in their ordinance, and they didn't put that in place, so you don't have the option to put that in either. As we've sort of alluded to before, you also don't have the opportunity to decide what the boundaries of the LERTA zone are going to be. The boundaries were set by the ordinance back in 2004, and they remain the boundaries today. The only things that you get to do are decide the length of time that the exemption will apply, and you get to decide the percentages that you're going to give as far as an exemption goes. So in a very real sense, you're going to be either approving this or not, and if you approve it, it is just going to be out there and it's going to take on a life of its own. The only option that you'll have at that point is to decide at some later point that you want to stop it. And you can pass a resolution that would stop the LERTA, but then keep in mind that you would have taken the pain of giving the tax, and yet you wouldn't necessarily still be getting the benefit from it. You won't necessarily keep getting people coming in and developing the land. Okay, so the process for adoption, as I said, you don't set the boundaries, and what has already happened is that the municipality has held a hearing, decided what the areas of the township that needed some sort of relief were and where it would best benefit from this. And based upon those hearings, it set those boundaries. You don't have a right to challenge the boundaries. You don't have a right to really change what those boundaries would be. So now the one thing that you also can, the other thing you can do is set procedures for how people go about applying for these. And I will note that the statute does require that each taxing district gets notified separately. So if the municipality is getting notified and the county is getting notified, you also have to get your own separate notification. And that generally will be by way of your own form required that, as a matter of fact, your resolution requires that a person applying for an exemption actually brings the application to your business office. So you're definitely going to be in on all of this. This is the areas that the township already approved. I will say that I sat there reading through the ordinance, and it gives street-by-street directions on where you go to figure out where the described area is, separate from the zoning. I don't know all of the streets well enough to be able to figure out what that looks like, and the map that is supposed to be attached to the resolution to the ordinance wasn't on the copy that I received. So I presume that that exists someplace, I just don't have it. Now, the one other thing that I would bring up in this regard is that the map is static once it's passed. So it was passed back in 2004. I have heard from other people that there was some discussion, whether it was in the township plan or otherwise, about expanding what the LERTA zone would be. That's not going to have any effect on you, because once you've passed this LERTA resolution, the map that is the zone that you're covering is static as well. So whether, from the prior slide, whether the township were to decide that certain other areas would be covered, so, C2, for instance, would be covered, wouldn't impact on you. Moreover, similarly, if they were to change it and make it so that area C1, for instance, was now covering more houses, or not more houses, but more businesses, that also wouldn't impact you because your map is set as of the point that you pass this. So it won't be changed by any outside factors. Nobody else can change what your LERTA zone is going to be. You have to use the one that's in place, but once it's in place, it is the LERTA zone. Similarly, I would point out that as of right now, it's my understanding that neither Millbourne nor Clifton Heights has a LERTA zone in place. Because of that, in the event that if they want to put one in place, it's not going to be automatically in place for the district. The district would need to revisit that and pass essentially a new LERTA resolution if they wanted to do that. All right, so then a couple of things. One is that the applicant for this has to apply before getting the permit, or at least at no later than the time of the permit. You can't already be doing the work on the property and asking for a LERTA exemption. There are certain instances where they could be doing improvement work that doesn't require a permit. Off the top of my head, I can't think of one that would give sufficient reason for doing this, but it could be. And if that's the case, then it still has to precede work being done so they have to apply for it first. There will be a form that the district's going to have. I know that there isn't one yet, but We certainly can make one. It won't include any maintenance and upkeep. It won't include residential properties. And I know I keep saying it, I want to make sure people understand this is not for everybody's properties. It is for commercial, industrial, business properties. And as I said, notice requirement is to go to each one of the taxing bodies that is actually supposed to be giving an exemption. And at the end of the day, the county assessor's office will come out and make a change to the assessment and will allocate what is going to be exempted and what is not going to be exempted. And that is out of our hands. We don't have any way to make sure that happens. So with that, are there any questions?
The only question/request that I have is that if we do move this forward tonight, that we have the map for the voting session on January 8th, and I'm wondering if we can get that prior to voting, so that we make sure that we're setting the map that's in place at this time.
The copy of the map that I got was from our records. I don't know whether there's a map in our records, and if not, we can certainly request for one from the township.
Okay. That was really the only question I have. I'm glad that we've gotten to this point in the process of looking at an actual resolution to move forward tonight, hopefully.
Any other questions?
I want to say I enjoyed working on this with Gina, Ed, and Lee. The example slide, what I really like and about the numbers is that we're still collecting revenue, and it's better than if there was no LERTA, no update. That would be if you're following along at home, that would be your fourth column. And it's still an incentive, but we're still doing right by the residential taxpayers by still collecting revenue. But we're still providing an incentive to people to come in, to businesses to come in and rehab. And you said you said we're not able to pass a LERTA for residentials, and that's state.
Correct.
That's a
under
state law.
the LERTA statute does not permit that.
Does not permit that, so there's no option there. But other than that, it was enjoyable to work on, and I do like how these numbers look as an example. We're not, in Philadelphia, they're 10 years. There's several years at 100% abatement. I think this seems reasonable for this township and school district.
Right, and what you were saying there is that if there was no LERTA in place and nobody did any work on the property, it would be around $80,000 that you'd get over 5 years on that property. Where if you put the LERTA in place, which was actually the impetus for the change, you'd get about $150,000, which is, a big difference.
I have a couple questions. So the township ordinance was passed in 2004, correct?
Yes.
And that is based on the state ordinance law that, if I recall, was passed in the mid-'70s?
Right. The LERTA statute was passed in the 70s originally. It's been amended since then. And it's the same statute that we're using for this resolution here. The
Yes.
only difference is that the statute gives the municipality a little extra authority to decide what would be included if we move forward.
I have significant concerns around this that stem from the fact that if you look at what has transpired since the mid-'70s, there's been a sea change in thinking around urban renewal, and I fail to see how this resolution captures current thinking around urban renewal.
All right. I don't know whether you're concerned over the language in the resolution,
No,
or
I
if you're
can't, no,
concerned with
no.
the structure of,
I'm concerned with the structure of the ordinance. So I realize the school board has no power to in any way alter that.
okay. I wasn't sure whether you were asking me a question, because I don't have an answer for that.
Fair enough.
So-
I just want to clarify that the board asked for us to go through a process to create a resolution for the LERTA. Mr. Berman is not bringing the board the LERTA. He is helping the board to understand the process so that we can get towards a resolution for, to match up with the township.
At this time, are there any public comments?
303 North Oak Avenue, I'm also the mayor. So the map, we have big colorful maps. I'll make sure, we did it once, I'll make sure the boards that they're accurate, so we're talking about the right thing. First off, I want to thank you for the work you did. Just a couple comments. On the Delta itself, first of all, it's only bricks and mortar. Or we call it sticks and mortar. It's guys coming out of the ground. So take example, the Drexelbrook banquet facility doing a renovation interior does not qualify in Upper Darby Township for a renovation under the LERTA program. All of ours have been, person buys a building, tears the building down, digs a foundation, comes up out of the ground. So fortunately, it goes fast enough that we don't lose a reduction in, they can ask for a interim appeal. Usually they don't. When we issue an LERTA, we ask them, like, we're not going to give you an appeal and then give you that. But in that 5-year period, the tax rate stays the same. And then at the end of the tax rate, all the taxes, if we were not doing zeros, and we're doing 3s and 2s, at the end, they pick up to the new assessment, correct? A new millage rate, correct? Your assessment goes to the new millage, it's year 6.
In year 6, yes, it's the new, it's whatever the millage
Right.
rate is, but then as far as the.
New assessment.
There's no exemption anymore after,
Correct.
as of year 6.
Right, so I'm saying, let's say it's 100 hours a year before I start, we raise $1 a year, we're at 105 at the end of year 6, in the beginning of year 6. And we have an assessment of the 105, but the millage rate is 2. It's to the newest millage rate where it used to be 1.
Right, I mean, it's actually reflected right over here.
Right.
I can point it out
I
on
just
the.
want the residents to understand, because it's very complicated. They think we're giving, and I think someone had said that we think we're giving money away.
Yeah.
The money never left. It's the new assessment on the new dollars over a 5-year period. But at year 6, it's the new dollars plus whatever happened in those 5 years, millage rate on the new assessment.
Yeah, keep in mind that the millage rate actually applies each year at the current rate regardless. It's just whether some part of the property value is being discounted.
Correct. I got you. So we're saying the same thing.
Right.
And the only problem I have, not problem, the only question I have on the 90%, and the reason it's always in our mind is all the properties that LERTAs have right now and all the properties that probably would have would be usually a buy. 110 million Drexelbrook, wherever it's at. The school district gets the 2% on the value of the sale. Township gets nothing on that. We get the mercantile, so when you're saying mercantile during the 5, the upfront dollars come to the school district. And the only reason I know the 10% in there delta between us and the county, right? The only thing I did hear from the assessor is they did not want different percentages. And I don't know
Yeah,
if
I
you've
spoke
said
to the
that.
assessor's
Yeah.
office today, so I went through that with him
Yeah.
already.
Okay. So we'll talk. I'll get you your maps. I thought we had them, but we'll get them. All right.
Are there any other comments? Hearing no more comments, I will review the agenda items. Agenda item number 1, the capital improvement plan update was informational and requires no board action. Agenda number 2, local economic revitalization tax assistance Act 76, LERTA, will require board action. So do I have consensus to move the LERTA to a vote For the January board meeting? Yes. All right, thank you. Motion for adjournment? Thank you.